Hello everybody, Justin from Playing Board Games here, and a few weeks ago I opened up a giveaway for 2 copies printed from Gen Con 2 years ago of Subject 5U-21, otherwise known as SUZI, and I am very excited to announce the winners and all of our semi-finalists today. This contest was pretty simple. You had to design a 3-course meal of player cards or other cards in the case of one entry that I enjoyed for SUZI to eat, an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert, as well as the restaurant that she is dining at. For this contest, we received 94 entries, which doubled our previous entries for the Charlie Kane design contest. The Charlie Kane one was a bit more in-depth, so I understand that this one is a little bit easier, but I just want to say thank you to the 94 entries. That was super awesome. I had a great time reading them. It was a very good time. I took this down to a top 20, and 2 winners, because I have 2 of these that I'm giving away, so we have 2 winners. These were chosen based on how funny or clever I found the entries. And I have to say, it was very hard to cut this down to a top 20 and also to come up with the winners, because there were a lot of entries that were very funny and very clever, and I really enjoyed them. Just because you didn't make this cut into the top 20, it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy your entry or anything like that. Again, we had 97 entries, so cutting this down to 20 was very tough to do, and I had to cut a lot of my darlings to get there. But with all that said, why don't we get into our top 20, which are in no particular order. They're actually just in alphabetical order by the entrance name until we get to our top 2. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Even though it says 20, it doesn't mean it actually is the 20th. These are just my 20 ones that I liked the most out of all of them. And again, it was very hard to cut it down. You were all very funny and very clever, if I'm getting your jokes correctly. All right, first one we got here is from Alex. The appetizer was Stray Cat, the entree was Miss Doyle, and the dessert was Cat Burglar. This was the restaurant Chateau de Chat, a feline dining establishment, or, Chateau the Cat, or of Cat. I don't speak French. I'm Canadian, but I don't speak French. This one was pretty clever, mostly because there was a joke. Some people, rather than just give a card, also gave a little bit of some flavor and story and some spice on top of all that stuff, which is fitting. It's a restaurant. And notably, the dessert of Cat Burglar was actually, in this story, SUZI ate another patron, which I thought was pretty amusing, and it's why Alex's entry made it through this. Actually, and some little intel, Miss Doyle and Stray Cat were probably the most common cards that we saw in this thing. There's something about SUZI eating cats, which is, pretty good. There was actually one entrance. It didn't make it here, so here's a bonus one, which was Stray Cat 3 times. And it was the ATM scene, ATM from American Psycho, which I thought was also pretty clever, but it did not make our top 20. So congratulations, Alex. I loved your little bit and description. Next up, from Alfred, we got Stray Cat for the appetizer, Stunning Blow for the entree, and Track Shoes for dessert. And this restaurant was called Dine and Dash. I thought this one was pretty clever. Again, here's another Stray Cat. I like that this is there's a punchline to this one. I'm a big fan of it. And some of my favorites were the rules of 3, and while this wasn't a rule of 3, it still worked really well for me. I also like the idea of this Dine and Dash restaurant. Probably isn't going to last too long for how it, it does its business if this restaurant is all about dining and dashing, but I thought this was a pretty clever story. You eat the food, you knock out the waiter, and you get the hell out of there. And those waiters, they're not going to be lasting long either. Next up, we got from Darren, this is the appetizer, was a giant albino penguin, protoplasmic mass is the entree, and Cookie is the dessert, James Cookie Fredericks from the Cyclopean Cafe. I really like this one, mostly because, actually putting Cookie as the dessert I thought was pretty clever. You would think that it was actually pretty common, but Darren was the only one who actually put Cookie for the dessert, so I thought that deserved some extra boost. And although these aren't exactly player cards for the entry, I still liked this enough that I wanted to give it a shout out. Mostly because Cookie as the dessert is pretty good. I also like the idea of, having some quail or some penguin for an appetizer. I thought this one was pretty good. Next up, from Devin, we got Wendy Adams, Revised Core Set Edition. Wendy Adams, original core set edition, and cherished keepsake, which happens to be owned by Wendy, and the restaurant was Wendy's. I thought Devin was pretty clever with this idea. It's super obvious. I think the only thing that would have made it better if it was Wendy's amulet as well instead of cherished keepsake, just because we have Wendy's name on it again. But I thought this one was pretty funny. It made me laugh when I first saw it, so nice entry here. Next up, from Dominic, we got appetizer Eat Lead. The entree was Say Your Prayers, and the dessert is the Red Glove Man. And this restaurant was Eat, Pray, Glove, which I also think is a pretty clever sort of pun. And I think Dominic did really nice here. I also, I imagine this one, I'm not in Dominic's head, and I'm not even going to pretend I am in Dominic's head, but the vibe from this is that it started with Eat Lead. Like, they searched up things that eat, and then they were like, I wonder if I could do a little play on Eat, Pray, Love here, and the Eat, Pray, Glove I think is pretty clever, so nice one here. Next up, we got from Felix. This is a pretty clever one. I really enjoyed this one. This has Dynamite Blast for the appetizer, Devil for the entree, and Brother Xavier for the dessert. This one is called Le Chain Reaction, which is, I think, incredibly clever of a design. Because this one is neat, because it kind of actually just features an actual gameplay loop as well. I think this is a really nice entry here. So if you don't know, you use the appetizer Dynamite Blast to deal to deal 3 damage to each enemy in each investigator location, and then you can have eventually this will turn into the devil blowing up himself, and then that'll blow up Brother Xavier, which I think is kind of just a really fun, clever thing here that also kind of fits in with the restaurant being called the Chain Reaction. I thought this was a really clever one from Felix. All right, let's keep this going with Hans Peter. This is appetizer, the Gold Pocket Watch, entree, Recall the Future, and dessert is Borrow Time. This is called Ma's Endless Feast. A pretty nice, simple, all-you-can-eat buffet style of thing, and SUZI would honestly be happy to eat for all time. So I think this is a really clever restaurant for SUZI to eat at, and I think that this is a really fun sort of idea. I think I'd be curious to see if there, I think this one would really pop if there was one more sort of kind of watch type thing, because I think both the Gold Pocket Watch and Borrowed Time work really well. I think Recall the Future also does fit, because it has future, it's forever sort of thing. But I do think that this is a really fun idea. I mean, it's a really fun idea, and it's I think it's really clever. All right, on to the next one from Isam. This one needs a bit of explaining because there was some intel in the submission form. So this is Sharp Vision for the appetizer, Ward of Protection for the entree, and Madame Lebranche for the desserts. The restaurant for this one was Shawarma Vision of Protection Brunch. This one is very clever when you get the intel, and if you might be able to, if you're picking it up, you might be able to actually see it. So if you take the first 3 letters, which were highlighted in the thing of Sharp Vision, the first 3 letters of Ward of Protection, and the first 2 letters of Madame Lebranche, you actually get Shawarma, which I could not say no when I saw that entry. And it was just I was like, why is Sharp Vision SHA capital RP lowercase? And then I saw Ward of Protection was the same, and I was like, of course, spelling out shawarma. I think that's really cool. I think this is a really nice entry. So I think it's just fun. And that's kind of what this contest is all about, right? It's about being fun and stupid, and that's kind of also what our channel is about. So it fits really well. Next up, from John, we got, for appetizer, Dynamite Blast, entree, Fire Extinguisher, and dessert is the Moon. And this one, the restaurant was called Explosivo Regretta. Before I get into this one, Dynamite Blast was actually a very common thing that we had here for SUZI. I think it's just it tells a good story, and a lot of these cards do this. So I think I got the joke here. Right, I think I got the joke that John was trying to pull, right? Eat something spicy or hot, and then it's so spicy you have to cool it down with a fire extinguisher, and then when the time comes, the moon, or but it's a regretta time. You know, it's a very regretta time. If that is the joke, I think that this is pretty funny. If it isn't the joke and I'm just like some weirdo who saw something that wasn't there, I'm still giving John here in the top 20 because I think this is pretty funny. I think this is a good one. All right. Continuing this on, we're almost through our top 10. We're almost into the top 10 for this list. We got from Larry, the appetizer is the Arbiter of Fates, the entree is Sin Eater, and the dessert is the Necronomicon, and this one's called Azathoth's Diner. Like the shawarma one from a few ago, this one also had a little bit of intel. Do you see it? If we just, there's something about each one. There's something about each one that kind of fits. So, Arbiter of Fates, the bite was in quotes. Sin Eater, that one's pretty easy, it's eat. And the Necronomicon. So, I thought this was pretty clever, finding something that had each of like some sort of like chewing or like biting sort of thing, or eating, was all just really cool from Larry's idea. Yeah, super sick. Next up, we got from Maxime. This is appetizer Kerosene. The entree is a flamethrower. The dessert is Burn After Reading, and this is Cthugha's Feast. Honestly, this one made it for me because I love the shout out to Cthugha. I think Cthugha is really cool. I think that I'm hopeful and optimistic one day we'll see like this like fire sort of theme. We have like seeds planted for burning in like a variety of other things, and I would love to see like actually like fire be a mechanic that's, you know, experienced in the actual campaign proper. I just think this is like, it's nice and clever, it's simple, you know, you take fire options and it's a Cthugha themed restaurant. I don't think it's particularly like hard to see the connection here, and I think that's just why I like it. It's just Cthugha, and Cthugha's sick. I do like that the appetizer for Kerosene as well had some thoughts about, like, you know, it was a drink, just a quick drink to start the night, and I think that's pretty cool. I liked this one quite a bit. All right, next up, we got from Maya. This one also tells a pretty good story. It's a police badge for the appetizer, beat cop for the entree, dessert is evidence, and this is Arkham Sheriff's Department. It's just SUZI walked into a building she shouldn't have, and she just starts eating everything at the police, like the police department. Sorry for the badge for the beat cop, which might even be eaten at the same time, and maybe also that beat cop was holding some evidence, or SUZI just made a lot of problems for the prosecution down the line. You know, maybe she did. Next up, we got from Nathan. This is appetizer is First Watch, entree is Second Wind, and dessert is Third Time's a Charm. And the restaurant is simply called the Order of Events Diner. I like it. Just first, second, and third. Pretty, again, like these are kind of like puns that are actually like pretty obvious on face value, but no one else did it. Nathan was the only one who did something like this, and I think that's just kind of like, it's for me when I'm reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, that actually is just like a really obvious and fun little pun to do. But, you know, Nathan's the only one who cooked it up. So Nathan, congrats. I think this is a really, really fun, simple idea. Next up, from Quentin, we got appetizer is Thieves Kit, entree is Surgical Kit, and dessert is Fingerprint Kit. And you might see where this is going because the restaurant is called Kits, and Supplies. I like this one quite a bit. I grew up in the 90s, and early Simpsons were like my favorite thing. I still watch so much of it, and it established so much of my sense of humor. You know, like those early seasons of The Simpsons are why I like laughing and making people laugh, right? And this reminds me so much of like that kind of style of humor where you see the random building in the background. There's like a pretty famous one online that's like Sneed's Feed and Seed, and it's called Formerly Chuck's, right? It's those kind of like background puns that I think are like what makes that early Simpsons like really, really pop, and this reminded me of it so much. So Quentin, you made me nostalgic, and that's pretty good. All right, from Samuel, we got the appetizer is the Harbinger, the entree is Watcher from Another Dimension, and the dessert is the Star of Hyades. The restaurant is the Gourmet Galactic Gastronomy. I like this one, just nice and simple. You just have a bunch of like otherworldly, like galactic sort of things, all in the stars, you know, all that kind of thing, and it just like it fits really well for the theme. In addition, this is unrelated, but I love how the weakness border looks. It looks really nice, doesn't it? It's like it's a very good design, and the colors just pop. I remember when they first released the cards for this game back in like 2015, 2016. Before this, we only had like Eldritch Horror, and the card design in those were like better than Arkham Horror, because we had Arkham Horror before this, but they were like not great. And then you get to these ones, and I just remember looking at the card backs for both the player cards and like the let me just pull one out, like the card back for the player cards. It was just like, it blew my mind. I was like, this looks so good. And like the card backs for encounter cards also look really damn good. And I think that carries over to the weaknesses. The weaknesses like really pop, and they're very noticeable. The white on black, it's really nice. I like this one though. It's nice and clever. Let me go on my tangent. I have to go on tangents. It's what I do. Okay, let's go to our last 5 here. We have 3 more of our runner-ups and then our 2 winners. I'm very excited. From Scott, we have the appetizer, Dr. Milan Christopher, the entree, Beat Cop, and the dessert was Agency Backup, so all those guys. And the restaurant for this one is actually Italian Deli, but Scott kind of got a little bit fun with it, and it was the Italian Deli, maybe the manager, maybe the owner, just begging SUZI, or telling SUZI, don't eat the patrons. Just, you come in here every week, you eat the patrons. So she's not actually partaking in the Italian Deli, which is delicious, by the way. But in fact, she's eating Dr. Milan, B-Cop, and like 7 dudes at the Italian Deli, which is a very fun little story that Scott was able to tell. Next up, from Tom, we got the Sin Eatery with the appetizer of Blood Pact, the entree de Vermis Mysteris, and the dessert of Hallowed Chalice. I don't know if you actually had... Yeah, I might have added an extra M. If I did, I'm so sorry. And if you have 2 M's, I nailed it. But my apologies if I spelled your name wrong while I was typing this. But I really liked this one. So this one I thought was very clever. The Sin Eatery is a very good like Arkham restaurant, like fake restaurant title. Which I thought was really clever. But then it also has like the gameplay implication, right? Where all of these cards work with like Sin Eater, right? So it's one of those things that I thought was really nice and was a good thing that made this entry, I think, really shine. And it was one of my favorites. It was one of my favorites just because it's like from top to bottom, really clever, works with the game, and is also just like is just a very fitting design for this entry. All right, on to our number 3 from Will. The appetizer is Fire Axe, the entree is Hatchet, the dessert is Hatchet Man, and the restaurant is Paul Bunyan's Lumberjack Lunchroom. I thought this one is pretty fun, really simple, you know, just like get some axes, get Paul Bunyan. You can imagine it like all the waiters are wearing plaid. There's a big Paul Bunyan at the start, the entrance going like this, holding his axe with like his blue ox. I don't know the name of the ox. I have Babe in my head, but I think that's a pig. I don't know, maybe his ox is named Babe, I'm not sure. But I thought this was a very fun little entry from Will here. Now, with all that said and done, let's get to our winners. These top 2, which were the ones that I just found to be my favorites of the bunch, which again was incredibly hard to cut down. And even when I had this top 20, having to choose 2 winners out of that bunch was very tough. So let's get to our first winner. From Kale, the appetizer is Barricade, the entree is Shortcut, and the dessert is Open Gate, and the restaurant is The Hole in the Wall. So, I'm pretty sure, and I have to just check right now, because it's just, it feels in my... Yeah, okay, so I was actually right with this. And I know I'm making the check in the video, but I'd like to do it that way. So the hole in the wall is like a term for a restaurant that's just like, you know, like a random hole in the wall restaurant that happens to be one of the best restaurants you've had in your entire life, right? And I thought that was a very clever name, coupled up with the fact that like all of these imply like, you know, like movement, or like you're like stepping through like a tiny hole, or you're covering a tiny hole, right? I thought that Kale did a really nice job of painting a complete picture while fitting with a very good theme of their restaurant name. It was these things that just made it jump a bit more above the others. I liked the restaurant pun. I liked just like the 3 cards, how it told a story to get there. And I thought this was a very clever entry. So Kale, that's why you made it to my top of this, and you're one of the winners of a SUZI Investigator card. So congratulations to you. Again, just barricade, cover the hole, shortcut. There's another hole where you find like you have to go through the hole to get to the hole in the wall restaurant, and then dessert for is the open gate, because, you know, tiny hole in the wall. Just implying that there's a small hole in the wall that leads to a great restaurant that happens to be called Hole in the Wall, I think is really sick. And now, the other winner we have from Phil. This is appetizer, Matchbox, entree, Dynamite Blast, dessert, Oops. And the restaurant is called Dynamite Delights. So, this was, to me, the entry that actually made me, like, laugh, like, burst out laughing when I first, like, saw it. I went, like, wow. I'm like, that's clever, right? Like, this was my reaction. I love the rule, like, the rule of 3. There is the setup, and then there's a great punchline without even worrying about, like, the Dynamite Delights, right? That's why this one, like, jumped out to me, and I flagged this one when I first read it as my, like, favorite one, and it stuck that way. So, Phil, I thought this was, like, a really clever entry into this contest, and it was my personal favorite for the whole thing. So I think you did like that. I think this is a really clever idea. It's nice and simple. Suzi's eating at the restaurant called Dynamite Delights. She has a matchbox, you know, for her appetizer. It blows up, and then she says, oops, right? Like, it's like, it tells the story of what's happening here, and I just love that you were able to do that. Only person who also used oops as a card as well, which I think is, like, very kind of, like, fun for this. Again, I liked so many of the entrants here. So even though, like, I had 2 winners and I said this one was my favorite, I loved a lot of this. You guys are, like, really creative and, like, funny. And it was so hard for me to cut it down. But I do want to, like, congratulate our 2 winners. But I want to, like thank everyone for participating. This was really fun. I liked putting this together. I'm hoping I can do more giveaways in the future like this. It's really enjoyable for me, and I love seeing what, like, you guys all cook up. Notably, for the 2 winners, emails we sent out right away. If I don't hear from them within a week, I will be going to 2 runner-ups, which I've already selected. So, you know, that might happen, but I imagine, you know, an entry, I'm going to hear from them right away. But congrats to the winners. This is just, like, once again, like, contest due process to make sure everything is, you guys know what's happening and all that. Thank you, everyone, for this. You guys all rock. I had a ton of fun. I hope you did too, and I hope you enjoyed all the entries that we had here today. I want to thank everyone for watching, for all of our patrons, for everyone who just supports our channel. I love being able to do what I do, and I love being able to make content for all of you guys, it really, like, warms my heart to be able to experience that kind of, like, with you guys through stuff like this. So I'm hoping I can do this again in the near future. But thank you so much for watching, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.